Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Pearl Harbor attack here. One of the main things that they did wrong, the Japanese, was they didn't have the third wave. The third wave was supposed to get the oil storage tanks, and here's a picture of them. And part of it was because they were disappointed that the carriers weren't there. But if they would have gone after these oil tanks, they could have really done a whole lot of damage. Because they didn't hit those oil tanks, they didn't have to rebuild them and stockpile them again. They had a service station right in the middle of the Pacific. And I've always made the contention of this: the attack on Pearl Harbor actually only permanently sank 3 ships. Obviously the Arizona, and here's a door off of the Arizona, and you can actually see the oil line here. But it's like getting beat up in a hospital. If you're going to get beat up anywhere, it would be, you would want to be beat up in a hospital. So the sailors just had to jump off the ship and swim to shore. They were only about 20 feet away in most cases, and the water was just deep enough for the ships to clear with a few feet, so the divers could inspect the hull. So they refloated all but 3 of the ships of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And they lost about 10 or 11 sailors, lost their lives refloating it from gas and so on and so forth. And this is talking about salvaging the fleet right here. And so yeah, it was dangerous. Now there was that the only movie I've seen about this was the one by Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robert De Niro, where they refloated they were talking about refloating the ships in Pearl Harbor. And yeah, it was like I said, if they would have actually had let's say a hour warning that the attack was coming, they would have put out to sea and still would have lost virtually all the ships. And the sailors would have been in several thousand feet of water, and there would have been, with the chaos ensued, most of them would have drowned. So as bad as the losses were at Pearl Harbor, if they would have gone out to sea and engaged, they would have been 5 times higher, and the ships would have never been refloated. We would have lost. Like I said, we ended up losing the 3 that they couldn't refloat, but probably would have lost 12, and the corresponding all the sailors on those ships. So yeah, and here's the battleships Tennessee and the West Virginia. Here's a picture of them burning, and here's a model of the Tennessee. And remember, the carriers weren't there, and that's why the Japanese called off the third wave. But if they would have gone after the oil tankers, the oil stored on top, it would have greatly hampered. Midway wouldn't have happened for a while, because they had to get the oil. Remember, the oil wasn't like today, where everything's mostly nuclear powered. You have basically unlimited range. You had to reload everything. And in the background, you can hear FDR, so I'll let him talk a little bit. And I'm going to show pictures. You can hear him for a wide ways in here.
United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that
it's always been my contention that FDR, and Gary Victor's book points it out the best. He went in as a skeptic. They needed a false flag to get us in there. Remember, Roosevelt got elected by saying to keep us out, but this was the white flag, or this was the false flag event of the last century. And Murrow talks about how steady Roosevelt is. Well, it was his plan all along to join Churchill in battle, first for Germany and then second with Japan. So I know this is going to upset some people, but be that as it may. It's Gary Victor's book talks about it, and he went in as a skeptic to debunk it, and yet he came out saying, they didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, and I don't think he planned I don't think they did the minutia of the planning, thinking that, well, they could refloat all the ships in there because they were in Pearl Harbor. It was a political expediency to get us involved and to take care of Hitler Europe first and Japan second. Thanks so much.